The book Life Esidimeni, Portraits of Lives Lost, delves into the personal stories of the 145 lives lost in this tragedy, as well as the effects this had on families as well as loved ones. Now launched by the Southern African Depression and Anxiety Group, along with the Heinrich Böll Foundation, Section 27, as well as the Life Esidimeni Family Committee, the book seeks to outline the timeline of the tragedy which started back in 2015. My colleague Katleho Sekhotho has the story.
Dispelling the narrative that the 144 patients who lost their lives in the Life Esidimeni tragedy had no loved ones or were not cared for is highlighted to be the aim of this book. Now, every page puts a face to the many names affected by what's considered to be South Africa's most severe incident of human rights violations post-1994.
On the 15th of August, my sister actually took her last breath. The reason why we did this book and why it was important to tell the stories is the narrative that was given at the time to say that loved ones or the patients did not have loved ones, or the loved ones didn't care, or they were not taken care of, etc. So for us, this is telling the other side. It's basically to dispel the myths that came out during that period, to say that these people were loved, they were cared for, and just to get into a Life Esidimeni was a process in itself.
Advocate Adila Hasim says the refusal of the officials involved to take responsibility for the tragedy intensified the pain the families experienced. Hasim was the lead counsel in the Life Esidimeni arbitration.
Throughout the process, the officials continued to deny responsibility. There were just finger-pointing and blame-shifting and the concept of, well, we act as a collective, and so there's no individual that is responsible. So there's no way. I mean, you think about it. If that's how you see that whole crisis as it unfolded, as just being something in which you could hold no one really accountable, it will happen again.
The advocate highlighted devastating comments made by the former head of mental health in the province, Dr. Makhabo Manamela.
I mean, it was astonishing. Throughout this testimony of Dr. Manamela, it came out that she basically forged licenses. She signed off on NGOs that had not been vetted. There's a very clear statutory process for any NGO that wants to provide services on behalf of the state, whether that's for mental health care users or anyone else.
Author Harriet Perlman says the aim was to create a book of deeply personal stories.
But I do hope that stories like this create awareness and people see what it meant and that justice must be done.
A panel discussion unpacked the difficulty in finding a word more appropriate than tragedy to describe what happened.
Tragedy doesn't fit the bill. Disaster doesn't fit the bill. This was a human-made disaster.
Civil society groups say they understand it will take an enormous amount of public pressure to force the NPA to prosecute former Gauteng Health MEC Qetani Mahlangu and former head of mental health in the province, Dr. Makhabo Manamela. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Katleho Sekhotho in Houghton, Johannesburg.